Hello, and welcome to episode two, much awaited episode two of GRC Face Off. And as you guys can see, we've got very two new exciting faces this time with us. It's none other than the Stat Man. Yeah, by the way, ये मैंने superhero नाम दिया है Mazher को यहाँ पे, the Stat Man himself, Mazher Arshad, and obviously we've been joined by none other than Aatif Nawaz. Welcome, guys.
बहुत बहुत शुक्रिया। एक तो आपने कुछ ज्यादा ही जरूरत से ज्यादा आपने तारीफ कर दी और खैर मुबारक आपको ईद की।
अच्छा, जरूरत से ज्यादा तारीफ हम करते नहीं हैं. Moving on towards the exciting part, which is the topic for today, and that is the run out at the non-strikers end. Now, these two people are very much, vocal about their stance on what they feel about formerly known as mankading and now known as the concept which is run out at a non-strikers end. So Mazher is very much pro this mode of dismissal, whereas Aatif feels the exact opposite of that. So now these two gentlemen are very respectfully going to debate this out, why they feel the way they feel about this particular mode of dismissal. So I'm going to decide who goes first. So we have a coin somewhere around here. Aatif, I think you have the coin. So Mazher is going to call, and we're going to see who goes first.
इसमें है क्या हेड एंड टेल या चांद और सितारा है जिस तरह हम पाकिस्तान में
हेड है जी बिल्कुल.
Okay, so tails.
Okay, here we go.
It's a heads.
Oh, it's a heads. So that
yeah.
So that means Aatif.
ये नकली ब्रिटानिया का कॉइन है, नकली कॉइन है. ब्रिटानिया में सिर्फ हेड्स होता है, उधर टेल्स निकलती नहीं है.
Okay, so does that mean that Aatif goes first?
Okay,
Aatif,
yeah,
you go
I don't
first,
mind. I'll
right?
bat first. It looks like a good pitch. Yeah, I'll have a bat
Okay.
first. It looks like a good surface. Looks like a, I think this is a target-setting pitch.
That's the attitude. That's what I like. So, Aatif, we'll give the floor to you. We are debating why you feel the way you feel about running out a batter at the non-striker's end. The floor is all yours.
Okay, so I'm going to refer to it for the purpose of this as man-cadding, okay? Now, some people think that's offensive, but it's not, because even family members of the new man-cad, who man-cadding is named for, actually don't mind the association because they think it's a perfectly reasonable dismissal. So if you think it's a perfectly reasonable dismissal, you have no issue associating with it, right? I don't feel, my perspective on it is, by the way, I recognize that the MCC laws say that it's a legal mode of dismissal. I don't go after any player that's used it before, not in the Under-19s World Cup, the IPL, bilaterals, whatever it is. If people use it, I have no issue with the players using it, right? My issue is with the law itself, right? My issue is with the lack of clarity in the laws for how this needs to be implemented, and what I feel is an unbalanced punishment for falling victim to the man-cadding or the run-out of the non-strikers and dismissal, okay? If we go back to the major instance where this kind of came back into the public consciousness, you have to go back to IPL 2019, where Rajasthan Royals were playing Kings 11 Punjab, I believe. Ravi Chandran Ashwin was the captain of the Kings 11 Punjab team. He was bowling to Joss Butler was a non-striker's end, and he dismissed him off a man-cad. Now, I don't know if you guys recall, but at the time, there was a big divide in opinion on this. Loads of people screenshotting the MCC laws and saying, "Dekho bhai, ye bilkul jaiz hai. Laws mein likha hai, aap kaise keh sakte hain?" But then on the other hand, you had a lot of great cricketers, people like Owen Morgan, Shane Warne, the late great Shane Warne, who came out and said that it was a disgraceful thing, one of the worst things they've seen on a cricket pitch. The MCC was under pressure to comment. So initially they commented that this was a fair dismissal, and man-cadding or run-outs at the non-strikers end are perfectly reasonable within the MCC rule. But even they, the MCC, shortly thereafter took that perspective back, and they wound it back on it and said that actually we're going to do a U-turn here because we feel that the batter had a reasonable expectation of the pause from the bowler being so long that the ball should have been delivered, so hence it shouldn't have been a fair dismissal, and the batter was, within rights to feel aggrieved. Now, if even our administrators can't distinguish between what suits a dismissal and where it doesn't, you need to take a look at that law. I completely respect the fact that batters have been getting away with it for a very long time. They have been stealing yards, and there should be some form of a deterrent to prevent them from stealing yards at the non-strikers end. But I feel if we stay with this kind of punishment at the moment, which is the bowlers can do this man-cad willy-nilly and bowl out and have the bowler out, I think we set a very dangerous precedent and a slip slide where the focus of the game completely goes off. When we look at Vinu Mankad himself, the man for whom the dismissal is named, right? He took 1,000 test wickets. He was the first Indian all-rounder to take 1,000, to score 1,000 runs and take 100 test wickets, right? A great all-rounder, great achievement. What's he remembered for? Is he remembered for that, or is he remembered for the man-cadding, right? That's what I fear will be the big picture of man-cadding becoming a regular thing. It continues to steal the headlines. The focus goes away from bat, ball, fielding, some exquisite play that we see, the reason we love the game of cricket, and it still leaves a sour taste as well. I believe there should be a deterrent for the non-striker to not steal yards as a batter. I don't believe that should be his wicket. I think it's too much of a transition. And again, it opens this Pandora's box that all of a sudden, like, what's next? Timed out. We're going to get tighter on timed out. Now, if you're a batter under pressure from the broadcaster, because you can't walk out until they've got the right camera on you these days, the right steady camera, they've got to walk out. They've got to have your WWE music ready to go. And you're walking out. And if you get timed out, then all of a sudden the fielding side makes a huge thing of timed out as well now. This is the next step. It goes into farcical territory, which is why I would like to see the MCC, I beg your pardon, amend the rules to create a different deterrent for batters. You shouldn't be allowed to steal yards. Maybe the penalty is maybe you're penalized by way of minus runs. Maybe you're penalized by way of some other form that they've used in cricket. But I think a wicket is too much, and which is why I find it very hard, as it stands today, to endorse this rule with no prejudice to anybody who supports it or uses it as a mode of dismissal.
Well, that was a lot. I feel Aatif feels very passionately about this, but of course, I appreciate that. But yes, I also agree with you to a certain extent that there is a lot of there's not much clarity when it comes to this rule, and I feel like people get away with a lot of stuff because obviously there's no clarity. But then again, we have the other perspective coming in, which is going to be presented by none other than Mazher Arshad himself. Like he feels that this is a legit mode of dismissal, so he has obviously his arguments about that. So I'll give the floor to you, Mazher. Please tell us why you feel the way you feel.
Well, first of all, I think that as far as the clarity of rule is concerned or the laws is concerned, I think it's a different debate altogether. Whenever this dismissal happens or whenever a bowler has run out the non-striker, the debate most of the time is not around the laws. It is about the spirit of the game. Like normally the bowlers, they get accused of not playing the game within the spirit. And this is the problem. I mean, you can talk about the laws and the interpretation of it, or I can understand that there is a slightly lack of clarity. But most of the times, when the bowlers they get the criticism, like when Ravichandran Ashwin, when he ran out Joss Butler in the IPL, so all the discussion on Ravi Ashwin was not about the lack of clarity in the laws. It was that Ashwin was not playing within the spirit of the game, which is a very wrong perception. And we have seen it with many other cricketers as well. In the Under-19 World Cup 2016 in Bangladesh, Kimu Paul, when he ran out Zimbabwe batter, Richard Ngarawa, most of the people, they might not know that the comments that Kimu Paul got on social media and other, internet platforms, he spent days crying in his room. That, he was accused of not following the spirit of the game, which is a wrong perception. And also, I think that if a batsman is stealing the ground, if he's stealing the runs, so it is that batsman who is not playing the game within the spirit. So, and there should be a penalty, like if a batsman leaves crease while using his feet and he gets out stumped. So we don't really say that this is against the spirit of the game. So if the non-striker is leaving the ground early, and we have seen it recently in the IPL, when Harshal Patel, there was a missed attempt when he tried to run out Ravi Bishnoi. And Ravi Bishnoi, he did it again. And at the end, it was a very close game. So we can have an idea that how small margins can even reflect on the result of the game. World Cup Final 2019, Martin Guptill, he was run out. I'm not saying that he was stealing his ground, but just for an example, that sometimes if you are stealing the ground, it can really help you even win the World Cups. And also, I think I would like to remind Aatif about his opinion recently when the batter was Charlie Dean from England. It was women's games in England, and the bowler was Deepti Sharma. So at that time, what Aatif posted on Twitter was, I get that it's legal. I get that it's part of the rules. Or maybe it was recently in the Women's Under-19 World Cup when Pakistan's bowler Zebun Nisa, she made that dismissal. And so Atif says that I get that it's legal, I get that it's part of the rules, but a tiny piece of my heart breaks seeing this happen at under 19 level. There is no mention of a lack of clarity in the laws. So you are giving this opinion only because you think that a tiny piece of my heart breaks. I mean, my heart also breaks when I see players or the non-strikers stealing ground and then win the game by 1 or 2 runs or by 1 or 2 wickets or on the last ball.
Can I retort? Yes, I can retort.
Oh, oh, absolutely, Aatif. Please go ahead.
Of course, of course, of course, of course. No, listen, I acknowledge a lot of what Mazher said there. I just want to clarify the tweet that I sent. I don't have this fancy new Twitter blue tick subscription, so I can only go 140 or 280 characters, whatever it is, at a time. तो इतने कैरेक्टर में मैं उसको मैंने वीडियो भी एम्बेड किया हुआ था उसमें वो लॉज की स्क्रीनशॉट इस तरह करना like my heart, you know what broke my heart about it is because that's where I see the focus of the game going. I completely agree with Mazher that batters should not be stealing yards. That's also against the spirit.
No, but Atif, how can a heart be broken if somebody is doing something within the laws? आपका दिल कैसे जो है टूट सकता है? एक बॉलर जो है वो लॉज को फॉलो कर रहा है और एक बैट्समैन जो है वो रन्स चोरी कर रहा है. आई मीन स्टील को मैं इसी तरह मैं ट्रांसलेट कर सकता हूँ कि वो रन्स चोरी पे चोरी करता जा रहा है, उसको आप आउट कर रहे हैं और आपका दिल टूट रहा है. आपको तो दिल टूटना चाहिए जब वो अपना ग्राउंड छोड़ के जा रहा है.
बिल्कुल, लेकिन अब आप देखेंगे इसको लॉ आप कह रहे हैं, मैं लूप होल कहूंगा. जैसे कि मुख्तलिफ कंपनीज हैं दुनिया में जो अरबों डॉलर कमाने के बजाय के बावजूद पूरा बिल्कुल एक पेनी टैक्स नहीं देते. ठीक है, now that's completely legal. Is that ethical as well? Like, I'm not saying this is unethical. I think the lack of clarity makes it feel unfair. Like, I think that the penalty of your wicket for stealing yards is too extreme, especially when you think about where your starting point is, right? Your starting point is, like, when I play cricket or when I cricket, what you were always taught was if you think the non-striker is being cheeky and trying to steal runs, you give him a warning and you say, look, next time I'm knocking the bills over. There's no warning anymore. People just go straight in like that. There is no, this is where the spirit of the game debate comes out. But I don't want to focus on that too much because there's no fact in that. That's anecdotal. The factual thing is the MCC themselves have gone back and forth about a specific instance of man-catting, meaning that they themselves have no clarity in it. How long of a pause is too much of a pause? What is the exact moment? What are the allowances? We saw a big an attempt of a man-cat in the Big Bash League over the winter as well, where in the English winter, the Australian summer, like where again the umpire said that no, it was on the basis of the time, the moment of the delivery stride, the bowler decided to use the man-cat. It wasn't deemed a fair dismissal, so they took that dismissal back. Like, that is far too unclear, right? It's far too unclear. I want the focus to be like, I think any Indian cricket fan should feel like any fan of Vinu Mankad. I know it was a long time ago, but any fan of his would feel really slighted that now his whole name is forever associated with a mode of dismissal rather than his terrific performances that saw him become one of the first ever Indian players to be on the Lord's Honour Board, right? That's an achievement worth talking about. Knocking over the bills because you think somebody's being unfair feels like, somewhat spiteful. Like I said in the tweet, by the way, I recognize it's a law of the game. Hence, I don't hold it against the player. I'm never attacking the player. I don't feel that there's balance there. It just doesn't feel balanced. It feels too extreme a transition. And I feel like the penalty to the batter of the loss of wicket in this instance is too much of a jump. That was the opinion I was expressing. To go back to the bowler that you were talking about, that got loads of abuse on Twitter, is tweet ke liye mujhe bhi bahut si abuse sunni padi hai. Pakistanis, Indians, everybody, right? And all the unpopular people were supporting me. Like, I won't take any names, but all the people in the world that you don't want to back your argument were backing my argument, which actually made me think about my argument for a second.
Most of them would be from, because I think only England or the people from England, they have a different opinion when it comes to man-catting.
सर आपके पड़ोसियों में से भी मुख्तलिफ लोगों ने मेरी इस आर्गुमेंट में सपोर्ट दी थी. बहरहाल, like, I was accused of being racist, of being sexist, of being xenophobic, of being an Uncle Tom, right? Which, like, the things I was accused of, I mean, we joke about it now because, like, I've had my therapy and I feel better. But at the same time, it's a really horrific thing. All I did was state an opinion, right? State an opinion, not even like a fact or challenge somebody else's opinion. I just said that I didn't like that happening. I didn't like that this was going to become what this felt like. If it's happening at under 19 level, it feels like it's going to become a regular thing across all cricket. People say, yeah, it's very simple. Batters shouldn't try and steal yards. I agree, but I feel this form of punishment and encouraging this kind of, this tactic it takes away from the actual joy of cricket, which for me is the
But
contact.
Atif,
And if we
I think happening at the under 19 level far more frequently. We have seen it in the recent men's under 19 World Cups, in the women's under 19 World Cups, because I think that the younger generation is far more intelligent, the boomers or the older generation.
चले सर हमें बूमर बना ले मुझे कोई एतराज नहीं है लेकिन मेरे
Not,
जमाने
not
के जो बूमर्स हैं मेरे जो 1900 के जमाने के boomers जो हैं we oh I've got a gift for you by the way Mazher I just want to just in case no, so there's no hard feelings this is a chocolate from Lords okay there we go right? I'm putting it in the post I'm putting it in the post
point about coming to your point about lack of clarity or it being a subjective call, but there are a lot of other calls that we see in cricket which are subjective, like LBW decision. So one day we see an umpire giving somebody, I mean, thinking that that ball is going to hit the stumps and he's out, and at some other day the same umpire or maybe some other umpire would rule it not out. So there is a subjective call involved in the one of the most common dismissals in cricket, which is LBW. Then the waist height no ball, sometimes like the famous no ball recently, which Murray Erasmus gave of that delivery by Muhammad Nawaz to Virat Kohli in that famous game at the MCG. At some other day or at some other umpire would have deemed it legitimate delivery. So I think that there is subjectiveness involved in a lot of decisions in cricket. So that is just one very small element when it comes to this law. The real thing is, or the main, or the crux is that the batsmen or the batters, they are stealing ground and nobody's talking about them. So the sympathies, they should be with the bowler. I mean, as you said, that there should be one warning, but again, there is no mention of a warning in the laws. If a bowler is giving somebody a warning, I think it's good on him. Maybe you can say that it's a better way, but if somebody does not warn it before doing the man cutting, I don't think that he's going against the laws. Right now, the margins in cricket, they are getting smaller by the day. We are seeing it in T20 cricket, the games being won on the last ball or by one wicket or by one run or in the super overs. So if we look at in this context, if somebody is stealing a ground, if he does it like 2 or 3 times, then I think that he is giving himself or herself a very unfair advantage. And that's why I think it's very important. And you have talked about some other penalties, but I think that it will slow down the game. I know that there are some people who are saying that maybe the third umpire should take control of it. But then, I mean, just imagine that the TV umpire going for the replays or asking for the replays again and again. I think it will slow down the game. So I think right now the best way to counter batters who are stealing ground is to run them out.
So my retort to that would be that, you're absolutely right. There are ambiguous modes of dismissal or modes of contention over certain dismissals, like LBW, which you talked about, right? But what happened with leg before wicket? The rules are very clear with leg before wicket, right? If it's pitching outside leg, you can't be LBW. The ball has to pitch in line. It has to be striking the batter in line with the stumps. Like, there's so many very clear edicts in LBW. And obviously now on top of that, you have the referral. Why do you have the referral? Because a wicket falling is a major thing that can change the outcome of any game, right? Your top batter, as it did in that IPL match. I keep going back to 2019, right? Where in that IPL match, it was Joss Butler, non-strikers, and Ashwin, the bowler with the man cat, right? There was no warning, as you suggested, right? I believe actually there may have been a warning earlier in the game, but that doesn't help my argument, so we're going to ignore that bit. What my point to focus on is the idea of they took their time. They worked out this replay system. If you recall, the first reviews for LBW weren't as sophisticated as they are now. Right, modern cricket fans are so used to the idea of ultra edge and then ball tracking. It's very simple, but it wasn't always that. That wasn't the first thing that happened. Before umpires had that option, broadcasters had the option. There were various technological things, which I'm sure Mazher has much more detailed information on than I do. But there were so many different methods they used before they settled on this. There was a whole transition because they had deemed that kind of attention and thought, because it's such a huge thing in the game. A wicket falling changes everything. So in my opinion, if you're going to popularize this, if this is the moment where bowlers try and take something back, and why shouldn't they, right? Absolutely. The game is already so heavily stacked in favor of the batters. The bowlers should be able to take something back. The fielding side should be able to take something back. I feel the penalty of a wicket for something that hasn't been enforced for such a long time is an extreme transition. I do feel the run penalty makes more sense, and it doesn't detract as much from the game. Right now, if you have Pakistan playing India and like Babar Azam scores 100 and Virat Kohli scores 100 and Shaheen takes 5 wickets and Jasprit Bumrah takes 5 wickets, but the game ends with, I don't know, let's say Amit Mishra doing a a Mancad, what do you think all the headlines are going to be about? And when you think about what those headlines are going to be about, tell me that's where you want to see cricket go.
Well, I don't care about headlines. All I want is the game being played within the laws. And we have repeatedly said it that running out the non-striker is within the laws. And you talked about technology that there is like DRS now or there's ball tracking, but all the games they are not played with technology. Just imagine a first-class game being played in Pakistan, which is not even on TV, like the Kaizen Trophy game or Ranji Trophy game in India or County Championship, where there is no TV coverage. So the umpire he has to make his own judgment when it comes to LBW calls, when it comes to no ball calls, when it comes to white ball calls. There is a lot of subjectiveness involved in decision making. So why can't we tolerate subjectiveness even if we agree that there is some lack of clarity in this law? And my major problem with all this debate is that people, I know that you haven't done it, but most of the people, when they talk against it, they bring the spirit of cricket or the spirit of the game in this discussion. So I don't think that if somebody is running out a non-striker who is continuously stealing the ground, and as you said, that wicket is a very important thing or is a very important event in the game of cricket, then so is taking runs. I mean, just imagine somebody who is stealing a couple of yards on every delivery or on every run. I mean, by the end of the over, he will have one extra run. And we talk about test matches or ODAs, which has like more than 50 overs or 50 overs. So, I mean, just imagine the amount of runs he's stealing, or a batsman or batter is stealing when he's not staying within the crease. So I think that there might be some lack of clarity in the laws, but MCC, the custodians of the laws, they keep on repeating that it is within the laws and it doesn't go against the spirit of the cricket. And also that's why now they have moved this law in the run out section of MCC laws of cricket. So I think that every year the MCC, they're actually encouraging bowlers to have this mode of dismissal, and they are discouraging batters and they are asking them to stay within the crease. But still, we are seeing that it's not happening. Like the IPL game recently, I mean, it was just hilarious that Harshal Patel, he attempted a run out. I mean, he failed, and Ravi Bishnoi, he still stole the ground on the very next ball. So I mean, you can have an idea that how much advantage the batters they're getting. So I think that even with some lack of clarity in the laws, it is completely within the laws. And if somebody does it, nobody should have a problem with it, and he should not be accused of not playing the game of cricket within the spirit.
Well, again, I've never accused anybody of that. I started this, I prefaced this whole argument about not going after any players whatsoever, right? All they're doing is following the law. But the law itself, I still feel, I mean, you may say that it's subjective and, open to interpretation, but like, I think because of the things you've mentioned, it needs further review. Like when you look at games that don't have the technology to review certain decisions, that don't have the technology to, have a look back at things, how do you expect an umpire who's already looking at the front line for a no ball, who's already, paying attention to 15 different things, counting the stones in their pocket? Like, sorry, I don't mean to minimize umpires' work, but they work very, very hard and it's a tough gig. But on top of all of that, we now want them to try and work out, right, what is a reasonable expectation of the ball being released when these things happen. It's the burden of it is excruciating. I wouldn't want to umpire a game. Like I really worry about this happening in club cricket here in England, because I know that it's going to lead to fights, arguments, all sorts of stuff, right? It's going to go south very, very quickly. Like, I mean, I'm thinking about how aggressively and passionately cricket's played on Saturdays and Sundays by amateurs around the UK. I'm sure it's like that in Pakistan and India as well, right? Like लोग गाली गलौज तो छोड़े, आप मार कुटाई पे आ जाएंगे, क्योंकि आप कैसे कहते हैं कि reasonable expectation क्या है? It's so wide. It's such a broad thing for them to say. I know you said that the MCC repeatedly say that, it's a fair mode of dismissal, and they've been trying to be emphatic by moving that law to the run-out section. That's all correct. But they weren't initially. They weren't in 2019. They were going back and forth and saying, yeah, it's fair. Actually, no, it's not fair because the batter had a reasonable expectation of the ball being released. Or actually, we're not sure. It is against the spirit of the game. No, it's not against the spirit of the game. If there's no clarity from the source, it becomes a really messy and potentially toxic, potentially dangerous situation. So I am absolutely with you, Mazher. I'm with you. I will be at the front of the parade saying batters need to stop stealing yards because it's unfair. 100%.
And what's the solution? Aatif, let's come to the solution. If you are saying that this mode of dismissal should not be implemented, then what's the solution? We see that batters, they are stealing ground in almost every game. So what's your solution?
I've got two offers, right? I've got two offers. Number one is the classic, which is the warning and then the man cadding or the run out the non-strikers end. Warning and then man cad. I will take that because at that point you've been warned. It's completely fair game. You're doing what Ravi Bishnoi was trying to do in the
Atif,
IPL.
then how come the lack of clarity becomes clarity after first warning?
Because now at that point you're not worried. The delivery strike, the reasonable expectation becomes irrelevant. If you're running,
No, but the law is still there. But the law is still same. You are saying that you have a problem with this law because there is lack of clarity in the wording of the laws. But how come this lack of clarity becomes a clarity once a bowler has warned the batter or the non-striker? I mean, I just don't get it.
So once again, if you're rewriting that law, you're making the warning mandatory thing, right? Which is it's less a warning to the batter, more of a note to the umpire to suggest, look, he's stealing ground. The umpire refers with the third umpire. I know some people say that it's going to slow down the game, but let's be honest, we're at a stage.
But every game does not have a TV umpire. Every game does not have a TV umpire.
Then you have then in that instance you got the warning, right? So we'll take TV out of it, but for the purpose of TV, I just wanted to make the point that nowadays we review wides and no balls in the IPL as well. So if you were going to review another thing, I don't think it's a massive deal, right? Anyway, especially something as contentious as this. If you don't have an umpire, if you don't have a television facility, you speak to the umpire and the batter and you let them know, look, I'm here with the ball next to the stumps. That's how far you are out of your ground. Next time, I'm running you out. At that point, the law doesn't need to factor in reasonable expectation of delivery, right? It's not something where you need to come over and in your delivery stride, flick the ball back onto the stumps. You don't need to do that. If you're running into bowl and you're basically at the crease, right? You're beside the umpire at that point and the bat has left his ground, you can do whatever you want. Abandon your run up, knock the bills over because he's stealing yards. It's clean as day, right? I don't think there could be any ambiguity about that at all. Not a reasonable amount of ambiguity.
No, but Aatif, I honestly don't get it that you are saying that after the first warning, you don't really need to worry about the point of release. So how come this thing cannot? I mean, how can this thing not be implemented at the first place without the warning? आप सिर्फ ये कह रहे हैं कि अगर एक अंपायर की जजमेंट है कि अगर बॉल का जो रिलीज है जो पॉइंट है व्हेन द बॉलर इज एक्सपेक्टेड टू रिलीज द बॉल वहां पे अगर वार्निंग हो जाए तो वो ठीक है वो तब ठीक है लेकिन अगर वार्निंग नहीं है तो वो गलत है आई मीन आई जस्ट डोंट गेट इट
लेकिन सर आप देखें ना सोर्स को देखें जो आपको इन्फॉर्मेशन दे रहे हैं अगर उन्होंने इतना एम्बिगुअसली लिखा हुआ है कि बंदे को खुद समझ नहीं आ रही कि अंपायर और थर्ड अंपायर की दोनों की खुद मैच नहीं हो रही
लिखा हुआ है वो वार्निंग के बाद भी एम्बिगुअस है वो वार्निंग की वजह से एम्बिगुअस जो है वो क्लैरिटी नहीं बन सकती
लेकिन वही ना आप उसको भी एडजस्ट करेंगे साथ में व्हेन यू एडजस्टिंग द वार्निंग रूल क्योंकि अभी फिलहाल अगर आपका ऑन फील्ड अंपायर एक डिसीजन दे रहा है और आपका टीवी अंपायर उसको करेक्ट करके कह रहा है कि नो एक्चुअली इट्स नॉट अ फेयर डिसमिसल बिकॉज़ ही वाजंट अ रीजनेबल अमाउंट थ्रू हिज एक्शन वेयर इज द क्लैरिटी देयर इज नो क्लैरिटी एट ऑल राइट So, and there's no uniformity. If the law is there and it's so unclear that two umpires that are adjudicating the same game can't come to a unanimous result, what are we doing?
But if try to understand this point that if I mean this is not my opinion but according to your opinion if the law is unclear how does it become clear after the warning
well this is it we have to adjust it don't we've got to adjust the law
so why can't we adjust it before the warning
well that's to go back to the previous part of it the other part of my argument which is the transition from having not used any man cards for I don't know, 20, 30 years, and then all of a sudden it's all the rage everywhere. And I feel like if we're going to keep wickets as the penalty, then you need to give a little bit of leeway there for that transition. You know, to move so hard right, to take a hard extreme turn into that form of punishment feels like too much of a transition. Ek din aap 10 din jail de rahe the, ek din umar kaid de rahe hain. Like it's too much of a, do you know what I mean?
No,
but
I think the game is evolving. The things they are changing, the laws are changing, the rules are changing. You remember about 10 to 15 years ago, if the bowler in his delivery stride, if he broke the stumps, that used to be a dead ball. Now it is a no ball. Also, about 15 years ago, the runners, they were allowed. Saeed Anwar, he scored that famous 194 runs knock with a runner, with the help of a runner who was Shahid Afridi. But now the runners, they are illegal in international cricket. They might be allowed in some other cricket where the MCC laws are followed. But in international cricket, they're not allowed. So the game is changing. So अब अगर लॉज के अंदर ये आ गया है और बार बार इस चीज को इनकरेज किया जा रहा है कि भाई बैटर्स रन चोरी कर रहे हैं तो उसमें अगर कोई नॉन स्ट्राइकर को आउट कर देता है तो आई डोंट थिंक इट शुड बी एन इशू एनीवे आई थिंक इसके ऊपर हो गई ये बात आप कोई सेकंड इसके ऊपर सोल्यूशन भी देना चाह रहे थे आई थिंक मे बी वी शुड कम टू दैट नाउ
वेरी सिंपल run penalty I feel this run penalty thing isn't used enough in world cricket. Abhi IPL mein, this is a slight tangent, so just indulge me. In the IPL, the games that are supposed to last 3.5 hours are frequently lasting 4.5, sometimes close to 5 hours, right? And the penalty that they've come up with is you're allowed one less fielder outside of the circle for the final part of the innings, which I don't feel is enough of a deterrent. They've also tried, fines. I mean, again, I don't mean to just make a sweeping statement, but we're talking about multi-billion-dollar, franchises. They can just absorb those fines. The fines make no difference whatsoever, really, if it means they can win the game. The real thing you can hit people with is run penalties, right? Like years ago in ODI cricket, this used to happen. If you had a slow over rate, they would take overs off your innings, which I think was, it was annoying for some people, but generally, I think it's a more of a fair adjustment, and it impacts both teams because, as you know, it's a game, as you said, of small margins, right? So if you are absorbing a 5-run penalty, in some instances, it might feel like almost as bad as losing a wicket. It probably won't be as bad as losing a wicket, but it might feel that way depending on the point of the game, right? This is my second solution. I'm sure there's many other solutions to this as well, but I don't want to present a problem and not present like a couple of options here. But in my opinion, like a run penalty is a fair deterrent. I understand that there's this movement towards, this has been happening for too long and people want to strike down and that's it, let's go for it. But I feel like by doing that, what you're encouraging is distracting from some world-class cricket. And I fear that this could happen on a big stage where things will get contentious and, the emphasis will go on completely the wrong things. We're just building a powder keg. And, I worry about where that'll explode. And this is why I'm willing to still talk about it. We joked about the Twitter thing, but it was quite a heavy thing. I had international cricketers, I don't know how they got a hold of my phone number, sending me long voice notes, galia de rahe hain, ye keh rahe hain, you don't know what you're talking about, who put you on the BBC, vagara, like all of it, right? I've got other people saying no, good for you, mate, I'm with you, mate, like all of it. I didn't want any of that. The best advice I ever got was from a cricketer who's a dear friend of mine who said, Aatif, mute your Twitter for a week and don't look at your phone, just chill. And he was right, because अगर मेरी बात करने पे लोग इतना गुस्सा दिखा सकते हैं, तो जब ये गेम में हुआ है, तो इस पे आप सोचें कि होगा क्या? अभी तो ये इन मैचेस में हुआ है जहाँ पे इतना उबल नहीं सकी ये सिचुएशन. अभी इंग्लैंड और इंडिया के वुमेन्स वनडे इंटरनेशनल में हुआ था. आप पाकिस्तान और इंडिया के मेंस इंटरनेशनल में जब इस तरह की चीज देखेंगे, तो क्या होगा?
मुझे तो बहुत मजा आएगा.
It doesn't lead anywhere good. आप ग्राउंड में मौजूद होंगे. I don't recommend it.
But Aatif bhai, on that run penalty thing, I think it is more controversial. Now just imagine a team needs 2 runs of the last ball, and the umpire, he says that okay, I saw this batter, this non-striker, he was stealing the ground. I am giving 5-run penalty to the bowling team. So now suddenly that target, which was 2 of the last ball, it will become how much? 7 of the last ball. So I think in this situation, a run penalty can be more controversial. So I think that it is better if we keep this thing within the players. So अगर कोई नॉन स्ट्राइकर, जो मेरा शुरू से ओपिनियन है, अगर कोई नॉन स्ट्राइकर बाहर है तो जो बॉलर है वो स्काउट कर सकता है. अगर आप अंपायर्स के ऊपर छोड़ देंगे, क्योंकि ये हो चुका है, वो ओवर हिट की पेनल्टी थी. अगर आपको याद हो, देयर इज अ वेरी फेमस गेम ऑफ चारकोट स्टैलियंस वेयर शुएब मलिक, he on purpose lost the game and he confessed it after the game, and then he was banned by PCB for doing that. The reason he did was that in the game before, when they were playing against Lahore, they actually won the game. They won the game by, I think, by 10 runs or something like that. Then the umpire said, okay, we have realized that the other team was 2 overs short and we are giving them 12 runs penalty. So Sialkot Stallions, they lost that game. So that became a very massive controversy. Now just imagine, जो मैंने आपको एग्जांपल दी है कि कोई 2 रन चाहिए लास्ट बॉल पे, वहां पे अगर पेनल्टी हो जाए तो लोग अंपायर्स की जजमेंट के ऊपर ज्यादा जो है वो एक चीज कंट्रोवर्शियल हो जाएगी. तो आई थिंक कि अगर ये प्लेयर्स के दरमियान में ही रहे तो वो ज्यादा बेहतर होगा. और आई थिंक कि थोड़ा मजा भी आता है, कोई स्पाइस और इस तरह जरा जो है ना स्पाइसी चीजें, जो कि मसालेदार चीजें होनी चाहिए. आई थिंक इट्स आल्सो फन टू वॉच.
I mean, that's like if you fun, I can't argue with. Like that's a very subjective thing. You will enjoy one thing, I might not enjoy the same thing. The reason I love cricket, and I feel like a lot of people love cricket, is the great skill that we see on display, right? The great cover drives that Babar Azam plays, the beautiful away swinging deliveries that Shaheen Afridi bowls. In my youth, watching people like Wasim Akram, Waqar Yunus, the things that got me.
Trust me, all these things, Babar's beautiful cover drive, Virat Kohli's drives, Rohit Sharma's pull, Shaheen's Yorker, they will all be there even if the bowlers they are doing man cutting. They will be there. Don't worry about it.
Like आप तो उसको रन आउट करवा रहे हैं ना नॉन स्ट्राइकर पे, तो वो उसकी गेम कौन देखेगा? Like
नहीं तो
look, I
दोबारा भी
understand.
तो
You're
अपॉर्चुनिटी
right.
मिलेगी. दोबारा भी तो
You're right,
अपॉर्चुनिटी
yeah. In that instance, right, you will see the great runs will still happen, the great wickets will still happen. But when you open up ESPN Cricket Info, when you open up Grassroots or the BBC or the Guardian or जो भी आप जहाँ पे भी आप अपनी क्रिकेट की खबरें ढूंढते हैं, then the headline ain't going to be about the cover drive, the 50, the 100, the 5-wicket haul. The headline's going to be about the man cad. I think that's a shame.
But if we normalize it, if we treat it just as like a normal run out, then there won't be any headlines. So there are headlines because we have made it controversial. So just let's accept that it is just a run out and there won't be any headlines, and you will only see cover drives, bouncers, yorkers, sixes. Just don't worry about the headlines then.
और नहीं एक्सेप्ट करते भाई, हमें नहीं मंजूर है.
So like the crux of the whole debate was that Mazher is going to stick to his laws and Aatif is going to just stick to his broken heart, and there's nothing any of us can do about it. ठीक है?
Yeah. चलो.
जब वो गप्टिल का थोड़ा सा 1-2 यार्ड पीछे रह गया था ना, मेरा भी दिल टूट गया था कि अगर वो थोड़ा सा ग्राउंड स्टील कर लेता, चोरी कर लेता, तो न्यूजीलैंड शायद वर्ल्ड कप जीत जाता.
अगर वो करता तो ठीक है, like वो अलग बात है. Like it would have been interesting to see if England had done a man cat. That would have been very interesting to see. But again, अगर ये होता और वो वर्ल्ड कप की सारी headlines completely इस तरह बदल जाती, wouldn't that be a great shame? Instead of talking about one of the greatest World Cup finals of all time,
yes,
about
अगर उसके बाद normalize हो जाता, maybe not in 2019, but maybe in 2049, 2053, तब अगर ये होता तो किसी को उससे परवाह नहीं होती. Just like a run out, treat it like a run out. We are worried about headlines because we have made it controversial. Let's normalize it.
Maybe I'm not going to dispute that mostly because by 2059 तक यार मैं already बहुत उम्र का हूँ. 2059 तक किसने बैठना है, तो तब उसके बाद आप जो मर्जी चाहे करें. But I just want, before we wrap this up, I'm just going to say, like, you know, obviously I respect everybody with the opposing view. It's just my personal perspective. कोई किसी ने भी गाली गलौच वाले tweets भेजने हैं, तो you can find me at Mazher Arshad or at like no, massive respect for Mazher. 99.9% of the time, I agree with everything he has to say. He says really wonderful, really sensible, really insightful things about cricket, and I'm really grateful to know him and to be able to get that insight and sometimes steal it when I'm broadcasting. Right? So I'm a huge fan. Like, this is a genuine. I'm not just like backtracking. I genuinely believe what I have to say. But if there's people in the world that are going to cricket, it's people like you, Mazher. Although you haven't today.
All right, that was some debate, you guys, but I'm really glad that we hashed it out. So I'm pretty sure the world of cricket is divided on this particular, topic anyway. You have Ben Stokes, sending tweets to Harsha Bogle about this, and maybe one day we'll see them battle it out just like we did today. So who knows? Maybe that will happen soon. But thank you so much, Mazher, and thank you so much, Aatif. Both of you were really passionate, and I love the chemistry and everything. And obviously, no hate to anyone. This is just your personal opinion about how you feel about this particular mode of dismissal. So no room for abuse, obviously. But I'm very thankful for you guys, and this was great. Thank you so much, and I hope to get to see you guys soon back here.
Look forward to it. My pleasure. Thanks for having me, guys.